Hello and welcome to the MMAC staff interview. Another one here with Ted Hughes. He's a very important a very important volunteer at the museum. He's worked here before, just after his master's thesis at UM. He's also worked at the Missoula Art Museum and was curator at the Fort Missoula Historic Museum. So he's definitely knows the town very well. Ted, first question: what drew you to MMAC in the first place? How did you start?
Well, they have the biggest and most diverse art collection in town. That's really amazing. And it has everything from European art to textiles to modern art to different American artists from around the country. And I think around 14,000 plus pieces. So as an art historian and a collections manager type person, I'm really interested in working in that. And they need some help with some of the cataloging and getting stuff into the database, and I have a lot of experience doing that. So since I'm kind of in limbo now between jobs, taking a little break from the 40-hour a week plus a week museum type job, I reached out to Raphael and Jeremy to see if they needed a volunteer, needed some help, and they said yes. So I'm loving it.
Good. So yeah. So what's your current project right now that you're volunteering here for?
So I've been cataloging some incoming recent donations. Like there's a series of prints by an artist named Jim Armstrong, who used to work at the Yellowstone Art Museum back in the day, and he's a Montanan, but he moved to Arizona many years ago and opened an art print shop there that's pretty prestigious and well known now. But he pulled a bunch of prints that he had made in '69 and '70, and he still had the collograph plates for those. So he created fresh prints of Bel Air. Anywho, and donated several. So it was fun going through those, cataloging those. And then I did a bunch of offset lithos and original lithos by like Carl Bodmer and other European artists that visited here and documented the West back in the old days. It's just fun to be able to go through these things and measure them, write a description, spend some time with them, and cataloging is a great excuse to do that.
Yeah, definitely. So is it the prints or the stones that are being donated?
The prints.
The prints. Okay, there you
But
go.
he did donate one. It's mostly prints, but he did donate one set of collograph plates that he still had, and some screen printing templates. So it's a little bit of both, which is perfect for a university-based museum that has a sort of a strong educational mission to it too. So
yes, I agree. Yeah, the printmaking shop there at the art school is amazing. I love what they do.
Yes, yes.
So in terms of I don't know, you've kind of become, or you've been described to me as kind of a guest curator almost. You're taking on sessions, cataloging, doing the work of a curator. How has that compared to your curatorial work at Fort Missoula and more general work earlier at the MAC and as well as MAM?
Well, the MAM in Fort Missoula experience sort of trained me so that when I was asked to guest curate the WPA prints exhibit, and it had to have kind of a quick turnaround. So I was able to kind of jump in, and I knew what to do. I knew the steps and how the exhibit should look in the end. So I was able to do that pretty quickly because in the Montana museum world, usually kind of have a borderline skeleton crew that has to really work closely as a team, and you can't just specialize in certain things. You have to kind of know how to do everything. So I kind of had that jack of all trades skill set, so that, and the exhibit had already been, the prints had been selected, and the themes had been selected, and some of the research, and it was a WPA exhibit, so there's plenty of material out there to look to for information. So I had a nice base there, then I could jump in and just kind of whip together, finalize text, get things up on the wall, hang things, light things.
So would you say you were kind of more of an installation tech for that show?
I was, that was one of my roles. I did have the gallery assistants, and I loved this, because usually at the fort I'd have to do a lot of the painting and patching and stuff, but I did have some help with that too, but I had to do a lot of it. I didn't have to do any painting or patching. The gallery assistants swooped in, and so I had these nice clean walls and this nice template, and to begin with. I did have to do some writing. There were some text panels, and a little bit, I added a handful of additional prints just to kind of add a little more context and to fill out the space a little towards the end. But yeah, it was just, and they're all framed. So you put the screws in, hang it, measure to the next space. So it was a nice, easy exhibit to hang in that respect.
Yeah, that is pretty nice. I do know the GAs, they do a lot of work, especially with painting, for sure. I've done some painting, in fact. Yeah, it's very interesting. So have you curated a show? I mean, you were curator at Fort Missoula. Tell me about one of the shows you've curated, as opposed to just guest curated.
There's one that, well, there's a couple that I'm pretty proud of. The last one that I hung was called Looking Like the Enemy, which is about the Japanese internees that were held at Fort Missoula during World War II, and just flesh out that story more in full. And then I did another exhibit called No Enemy Movement Observed. It's about a Vietnam veteran who donated his collection of photographs and artifacts to the fort's collection. And that was, so this guy's still alive. His name's Leon Howard. So it was interesting to do an exhibit at a historical museum where the person it's about is still alive. But do you want to see, really, I can show you the PowerPoint just really
Sure,
quickly.
yeah, if you've got images, I'd love to see them.
Okay. Just really quickly. Can you see that okay?
Oh yeah, that's great.
Okay. So here's Leon, and he had this, so here's my artsy fartsy side that I call it. So for this exhibit, Leon he was a Marine scout. So he had a camera and he had a lot of leeway, and he was on kind of a loose leash, so he could take a lot of pictures out on missions that maybe your average soldier or Marine would not have had otherwise. This was in 66 and 67. And he had a couple hundred photographs that were amazing. They had that kind of, they're either black and white or had that Kodachrome sort of vintage feel to it. And they had a great composition, were interesting. So that struck me right away. But they were little snapshot size. So I took them to Marcy James in town, the art photography business, and she enlarged them 8 by 10, 11 by 14, and even some 16 by 20. so that you could see more what was going on. And so, and that's, I wanted people to emote with Leon's experience as a Vietnam veteran and like walk the line, like just tell the story, no controversy, be honest, but there was some concern that there might be some cranky controversy about a Vietnam show, but we didn't have that problem at all. So, and it's a history exhibit, so you're going to have a lot more text explaining things, but I try to bring sort of an aesthetic approach to that, including some poetry. I sprinkled some poems by a Marine Vietnam vet named John Musgrave around the exhibit. And he donated a bunch of artifacts too to help add to the sort of the atmosphere and experience. Here he is after basic training. That's Leon. Mm-hmm. Before he deploys. Here's his mom visiting him. So this is him after basic, before he goes to war. And he looks really young and kind of fresh-faced. And here he is in the combat zone. Maps. There he is with the M16. You just do a lot more explaining in a history exhibit than you might in a fine art exhibit. And he had this journal that he had to make notes every 15 minutes when he was scouting. And if he didn't see anything, he'd put no enemy movement observed. 12 o'clock, no enemy movement observed. 11:45, booby trap explosion. So there'll be this monotony, and then something horrible and terrifying will happen. Then he'll go back to no enemy movement observed. So, and we got a great response from the show. You'd see these old, crusty old white guys, veterans going in, and they would come out in tears. It really stirred them. We had a crew from the VA come out who does documentaries. Got to have Siegfried Sassoon. I threw some World War I stuff in there because we had a whole little central room that was all about post-traumatic stress and how far back that goes. Then here's the documentary crew called Make the Connection. They came and they interviewed Leon in the exhibit. It's so veterans with post-traumatic stress know that they aren't alone. They can go to this website, and so you have the Vietnam era guys saying to the Iraq war and the Afghan war guys who come back with post-traumatic stress, they're like, look, I've struggled, but I was able to put a life together and somehow move forward. And the makeup crew was there. They just treated him like a star. It was really nice to see that. Then the local quilters, the Valor Quilt ladies made a quilt for him. Leon tears up quite a bit. And then here, this is the opening. You can just kind of see how I laid out the text panels, photos, etc.
Yes, that's very cool. Are all these items in the permanent collection now, or?
Yeah.
All right, yeah, that's great. So they could do a different spin on it maybe in a few years, huh?
Yes, definitely.
So yeah, speaking of collections, right? You did your master's thesis on something in the MMAC collection, the Flemish tapestry. Tell me a little bit about that.
So that's the Wars of the Romano is a big 10 by here. Come on.
So yeah, so tell me about your research, how you went about it, and what did you learn?
So when it was coming to be my thesis, Valerie Hedquist was my thesis advisor. And she said, go over to the Montana Museum of Art and Culture and find an artwork and research that for your thesis. And her, one of her many specialties, because she's a genius.
Oh, she's great, isn't she?
She's great. She did her PhD work and a lot of postdoctoral research on Dutch art of the Golden Age. So, and I was really interested in that too. And so there's this tapestry that's from the late 1500s. So I selected that. It's called Wars of the Romano. And you just kind of do a deep dive, well, not like a PhD level deep dive, but a master's level deep dive into the context and the iconography and how they're created. And so I was able to learn all of that stuff about the tapestry trade and in the Low Countries and the Renaissance and the late Renaissance, etc. So it's a battle scene. There, you know, there's some Romans here because there's a Roman banner there. And there's a lot of sort of recurring, some of these figures recur in other tapestries and drawings and paintings from the era. And I learned a lot about the border iconography. This was a popular border. At the time, you have gods and you have beasts. Bestiaries were really popular. So all these beasts have different symbolisms to it. That's Zeus and Hera. There's cornucopia, Vulcan and Venus. All these sort of mean something. And I just looking through books of tapestries, I found a very similar border to this one. It's from a workshop, maybe 20 years earlier than this was made, but so those cartoons, they call them cartoons, you know, may have been shared or sold to a different workshop or whatever. And so I learned about weaving and showed the incredible detail that they could achieve in tapestry at the time. Like those veins on the guy's head, like how they do that. And then some of the history of the tapestry trade. So the princes and dukes and kings like to use tapestries to enhance their princeliness. And you could take them on the road. You could roll them up, take them on the road with you, or you could spruce up your castle with them, cover up these cold stone walls with these beautiful tapestries. And they were donated by this woman named Josephine Bay Paul, who was from the East Coast. She was the first female president of the stock exchange. And she donated a handful of artworks to the collection. I don't know why. Like I wonder, was she was like JFK she had a big estate in Florida. JFK would fly down and stay at her estate. So she was really big in Democratic politics. So I was wondering if maybe she was friends with Mansfield or something. But yeah, it's still a mystery how they ended up with us, but it's amazing. You know.
Yeah, so what's the significance of having a tapestry like this in MMAC's collection?
So we're Montana, we're not exactly the center of the art universe. We're in a small town, a smallish, well, not by Montana standards, but a smallish town. It's a university, and we have this grand example of European art. And there's a lot of other amazing examples of European art. here in Missoula that you can, that I could see in research. And there's another tapestry that's from the early 1500s, and then another tapestry that's from the early 1600s. And that's usually something you'd have to travel to a big city to be able to see. That's what's amazing about MMAC's collection, is the diversity of it. Is that we can see art that you'd usually have to travel to a city to see otherwise. So it was a great research project, and I learned a lot. And
Very cool. Yeah, no, it's always good to have more information, right? I mean, as you catalog during your current project, I'm sure you can appreciate all the information given to you just by the owner, by the donor.
oh yeah, when Brandon Reinschus was curator at MMAC before he moved over to MAM, he called me and he's like, "Didn't you do research on the Wars of the Romano?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'll send you my paper." And actually, when I was there, back in 2007, that's how long ago it was, I'd researched some other things, and Brandon would, "Didn't you write about this? Did you write about that?"
A local celebrity, huh? Something like that, anyway. That's very cool, though. Yeah, I sure hope to be recognized by my writing someday.
Yes, it's all about the writing. That's what was so great about the art history degree, is it gave me that writing and sort of academic background. And I think that's one reason why they hired me at MAM, was I had that background, plus the collection experience, thanks to MMAC. So.
Yeah, so I don't know. Could you compare the two collections, right? How does Mac specialize versus, I don't know, in any organization? Let's take MAM, I guess, for example.
The Missoula Art Museum has a really specific collecting mission. It's to collect modern and contemporary art from Montana and then the region. So it has a nice, tight, clean collection mission to keep it dialed in. And I don't know how many objects are up to now, probably 4,000 or so. Whereas MMAC has a lot more general collection. So that's why they can have stuff from the Renaissance. Then they also have artworks from students that just graduated. So it's a bigger, it's probably 15,000
It's pretty,
artworks.
maybe not quite that, but it's pretty big.
Yeah, 14, 15, and then very diverse. So it's nice to have the two institutions, one that's has a mission, and their exhibit mission is around that.
So how does that contribute to the kind of the educational mission of MMAC as well?
Well, since they have a little more leeway, so like there's the African art exhibit that's up right now. And that wouldn't fit into MAM's mission at all. But you still want Missoulians and Montanans to be able to see some beautiful African art and have it interpreted and presented educationally. So if we didn't have MMAC, that probably, I don't know where they would do an exhibit like that. But MMAC can also feature out-of-town artists, out-of-state artists, in-town artists, to kind of riff on a different riff than what MAM might have done. So
yeah, no, that African show is very cool. I got kind of a firsthand tour of it, and actually my interview coming up with Ashley Rickman. She's gonna talk to me about her research with the Cuba textiles there, the skirts and the royal velvets, and I'm very excited about that.
Oh, it's amazing. Everyone needs to go see that.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I think I don't know if it's up quite yet, but I think on the MMAC website there's a virtual tour.
Yes, yes.
So
It's very good.
there we go. So check that out too.
Yes.
Well, Ted, we're approaching the end of our time. Do you
Okay.
have any kind of concluding thoughts? Anything you'd like to get out there?
I'm just support the arts. Please support your museums and support the arts in general, and especially MMAC's working towards having its own building, its own presentation space in this incredible collection that we have. It's our heritage, you know. It's the state's collection. It belongs to all of us Montanans. So soon we're going to have this beautiful exhibition space that will do justice for this really incredible collection. So
Absolutely, yeah. With so many pieces, having it housed all under one roof,
yes,
being able to be displayed as such. Very cool.
vitally important.
Valuably, exactly. There's just not enough room in those two little galleries for all the majesty that is.
No,
Well, thank you, Ted. I was
Thank you, Sean.
very, very exciting to hear about all your career experiences and what you can tell us about MMAC. I really appreciated having you on.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you all
Talk to
for
you.
watching. Tune in next time for the next interview.